And we're singing. We're singing. Dun, 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 dun. Time to talk. Beauty and the Bitch. Shenanigans. You know that song? Shenanigans.
Yes, I think I heard that on the backstreets in Brazil last time.
But literally, how would you say, like, every time I go to say the word Shannara, I'm always like, first of all, I either sound like racist or like I'm making this word up and I can't do it.
Oh, you did mispronounce it, though. It's actually Shannara.
Shannara.
Shannara. Yeah, it's one of those words. I would be down for Shannara. I want that to be like She-Ra's cousin, who's like maybe a little bit more street. We don't want to get racist and racial, but it's just a little bit more street.
Shannara.
And updated for the time, so she's woke.
Well, we might get to that, but for today, we are talking about Terry Brooks and the Shannara Chronicles, his giant epic that's comprised of many books, and you're joining us here on Beauty and the Bitch. I'm Morgan.
And I'm Shannara.
And that is why we just shortened that to Mick. It's just like literally too many syllables.
It's a horrible name. My mom actually, she was naming me, and she had an epileptic fit right in the middle.
That checks out.
Yeah, so that's why I have the name Shannara Mick.
Yeah. But it's so cultural.
I mean, you know what? Did I tell you I did 23andMe and I found out that I'm just fucking white? I think I told you that already. I was so fucking upset. Well, I can't even tell you. I just English and Scottish people. I was 2.2% West African, but girl, I can't even really claim that.
No. But I will say about Scottish people, my Hollywood crush Sam Hugan of Outlander fame and Princess for Christmas is, of course, Scottish and so beautiful. So there's that.
Well, I mean, my beauty is a given, I believe. But I'm just talking about, like, long-standing racial guilt. I just wish I would have loved to have found out that I was, like, at least 15% Native American. So I was really hoping for. So I could speak with some kind of voice other than the voice of the oppressor. But I mean, that's the thing, is we just have to, you know what? White people pretending like there's no racial guilt is where a lot of the racial hatred gets like born from. You know what I mean? So it's like we're not dealing with our shit, and so we want to push it off and pretend it's not real and blame it on other people.
Make it someone else's problem.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast just recently where they are still debating if black people naturally have a lower average IQ than white people. Oh my God. That is still a debate that people are having. So I would just like to put out that there are still very racist people out there, and they may coach all of their information and
they may be the president of the free world.
Oh my God. Yeah, I wish I could just have just a minor stroke. I don't want a big one, but just a minor one that lets me forget for a few days where we are. You told me about
Justice Kennedy.
Yeah. Retiring. Who the hell retires from the Supreme Court? You're there till the day you die, motherfucker.
You are supposed to be, essentially.
I mean, obviously I don't want the CIA to come swarm my house, but I think they blackmailed or threatened or paid him off.
Which is exactly what we were talking about. Because, like, who in their right mind wants to hand another Supreme Court justice to Donald Trump? Like, people behind the curtain is who the fuck wants that? Some stupid-ass people.
Girl. But it's the lizard people probably in charge of all this.
Well, girl, they're the ones pulling the curtains.
Girl, they are the curtain. Lizard skin.
We're not here for beauty and the politics today.
No, we're not.
But I do have a question about Terry Brooks. Okay. Do you know, is he American? I literally don't know if he's American or British. Honestly, I generally assume people who are good at writing
are English. Yeah. No, he's American. He grew up in good Lord, Grand Duluth, Minnesota, or some goddamn place like that. Just a second, I've got it right here. He was born in hell. No. He was born in rural Midwestern town of Sterling, Illinois.
Illinois.
I mean, I'd have never been there. That might be the best place in the Midwest, I should say, while I'm talking shit over here. But I see rural Midwestern town and my dick shrivels.
Yeah, it makes me think of, like, Pawnee, Indiana, from, like, Parks and Rec.
Well.
Which doesn't look like a horrible place to live.
It's not a win, though. What's that, Big Burger? Jolly Burger? Big old fat burger? What's she called? That restaurant?
Big Belly Burger?
Big Belly Burger!
Is that it?
No, Big Belly is from something else. That's a different show, Big Belly, I think.
It's so easy to make fun of the food industry.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, that part of Pawnee is not okay. And those bullshit people next door are not okay. But Pawnee itself ain't so bad.
Yeah, no, they're great. Okay, so Terry Brooks, he's this epic fantasy writer, right? So he'd been writing casually since he was in high school. And then when he was in college, I read that he read The Lord of the Rings and he got inspired to write things in the epic fantasy genre.
Yes.
But also I read that he said, like, he did a TED Talk called Why I Write About Elves, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it's called?
It is what it's called. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he said in his TED Talk, girl, which I didn't listen to, I just like read some clips, but that he thinks that his style is owed more to William Faulkner than to Tolkien, which I think is pretty interesting from the experience I've had with the Shannara Chronicles. It's pretty parallel to a lot of Lord of the Rings-esque things, which all fantasy is.
Yes, and okay, so first, he does say that he's more inspired style-wise by Faulkner. I think that is, I'm not trying to come for the man, but that's quite a thing to say. Mm. You know what I mean? Because then you start looking for like Faulkner, who was, I mean, arguably the best Gothic Southern writer ever, who's ever existed, arguably. And you start looking for like that style and that really, you know, because Faulkner did things that people still today don't want to see in a book. It's too challenging, too hard. And I do not see that in the Shannara Chronicles, you know. But that being said, a lot of people do say that really his books are just a ripoff of Lord of the Rings. And there are multiple really obvious parallels. But in his defense, he started writing the first book in 1967. By the way, it took him 8 years to write The Sword of Shannara. Now I can't even say it right.
Was that the first book? Or the first trilogy?
That was the first book of the first trilogy. Yes, The Sword.
It took him how many years?
It took him from 1967 to 1975. 8 years.
Well, girl, there's hope for us yet.
Well, I read that. That's really why I wrote it down. Is I was like, look, maybe you're not a complete failure.
And then again, maybe you're definitely not. You're definitely not.
Oh, thanks.
But it is like always kind of soothing to learn that like really accomplished people have also struggled with like taking the first step, because oftentimes it's the first step that is the hardest. I mean, for sure it's the hardest to get published and to get notoriety on.
Look at you, white female Gandhi over here. The first step is always the hardest. I don't know if that was Gandhi.
Now that I'm super unemployed, I see so clearly.
Oh, yes. There is some truth there. Yeah. You're not bogged down. Yeah, exactly. With all the bullshit for some job you don't care about.
Very introspective.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I kind of have beef with saying that the Shannara Chronicles or any part of it could be a ripoff, because in my super honest opinion of all the fantasy that I have devoured, of which I feel has been plentiful, but of course there's so much to read. There's a lot I haven't read. But everything is paying homage or inspired by something else. And that's why they say Tolkien is like the god of modern fantasy, right? He's the father. He brought it forth. He's the one who reminded us, like, he didn't invent the concept of like elves or goblins or whatever, but like he kind of brought it into this mythical world that you could explore on like a deep level, right? And he probably wasn't even the first person to do that, but he did it so well that so many people have gone on to do it. But at the same time, I did read a lot of parallels in characters, but I also don't want to judge him, because when I write, I'm so inspired by what I love.
Oh, completely. And like I said, Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, didn't it come out in 1954?
That sounds right.
I remember because that's the year my mom was born. Something happened with Lord of the Rings in 1954. Because I connected to my mom. But anyway, I'm the best son ever. Because I know the year of my mother's birth.
I just meant how sweet, like, I've looked at, like, pop culture timelines of things that have like happened the year I was born. The most popular book the year that I was born is I think Queen of the Damned. Oh. So like there was some good Anne Rice situation things happening, but like can you imagine like being born that's just such a monumental thing, but like what did I ever do with my life?
Well, so it was written in 54, and then he started working on his in 67.
When he was in college.
Yes, so only 13 years later, it was at the height of its fame. Mm-hmm. And it just, I think we should cut the man a little bit of a break.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I mean, one of the biggest parallels that people always point out is the skull bearers from the Shannara Chronicles. The books, I mean, are essentially the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. But girl, we've even done games before where we compare all these different Nazgul looks alike.
They live in so many fantasy novels.
The Wheel of Time, Harry Potter, among others, right? Aragorn, was it those books about those dragons, that boy? And Aragon, yeah. Horrible series, by the way. I did read it, but horrible. But they're shades in Aragon. Yeah. They're very much like Nazgul. So I don't think that's fair.
I didn't write this down, but the internet said that there was these two characters that super mimic Bilbo and Frodo. Mm-hmm. And I haven't read any of the Shannara books, so as another reason why I'm not trying to come for him. But sure. The internet has said, as far as relationships go, that they have a lot of similarities with relationships in Lord of the Rings. But Lord of the Rings did a good job with relationships.
I mean, it is true. Shay, who is actually the grandfather of What's-His-Ass from the TV show. The grandfather of Will from the TV show is Shay.
I like Will.
I like Will, too. He's a little bland, but we'll get to him. But
of course he's bland. He's the hero.
Exactly. Yeah, he's the white, blonde, pointy-eared hero. You know what I mean? That's fine. Shay is his grandfather, and he's the hero of the first one, whereas Will is the hero of the second book in this huge thing. And really
his grandfather's the hero is the very first book in the first trilogy?
His grandfather and his great-uncle, who's in the TV show, Flick, are essentially the Frodo and Sam. Flick is Sam, and I don't know if you...
Is he in season 2?
He's in season 1, but near the beginning. He's like his uncle type person, I think.
Oh, before he goes off on his quest.
Yes, he doesn't call him great uncle, but I believe as long as the TV show hasn't gone too far from the book, it's his father's brother. Okay. So in the TV show, they may have made his father Shay. It seems, because I just finished, to an extent, season 2, and it's really hard to watch because I think it's drivel, but I think that they were saying that his father was Shay or something. So I don't know. Anyway, but in the books, it's the grandfather and then the grandson.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And his grandfather is very much like Frodo. He's reluctant. He's homey. He doesn't want to leave.
What, you mean Bilbo?
No, I meant Frodo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then, well, I guess you could say Bilbo. I mean, in the world of fantasy, Bilbo and Frodo are very similar. They're very similar people. And then his brother, Flick, is very much like the comic relief as much as there is any in this epic fantasy. And he's a tag-along, and he's very loyal to his brother. It's very similar.
Do you know what else I really struggled with diving into this? Because, again, I haven't read the books, and I just have researched and then also watched season 1 of the show, the Shannara Chronicles. It was, really counterintuitive for me that there wasn't a character named Shannara.
Oh, yeah,
Which seems like such a stupid thing, but I literally Googled twice, who is Shannara? And the first time I Googled it, I didn't find an answer that I was looking for. And then I watched the whole first season, and I still hadn't learned who Shannara was.
So, do you know who she is now?
So she's a family, right? She's it's like the House of Windsor. Yeah. It's like the House of Shannara, right? Essentially?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And they've got the power to do this magic stuff, yeah.
And
they have a sword.
They did not explain that. They just throw a show at you with a word, and you're just supposed to... how are you supposed to know that? They never say that.
That is so fair.
They never say that.
I would love for you to go onto IMDb or something and be like, I went for this bitch Shannara. She didn't never show up. Fuck this show.
I for real,
this absent-ass Shannara figure.
I was for real embarrassed by the whole situation from, start to finish.
It is pretty confused. Well, I mean, okay, let's just say, first of all, in this Shannara series... there are 30 books so far.
And Terry Brooks has 23 books on the New York Times bestseller list, a huge part of which are the Shannara series.
The Shannara series. And the reason, really, that we decided to do this episode now, because it is a little strange, because, frankly, the TV show has more or less been canceled after 2 seasons. We'll get back to that. It's canceled! There's a possibility that we'll return to for a zombie Chronicles of Shannara to come out.
Or in 10 years they'll do a reboot.
We'll do a
after
reboot.
He's dead.
I think that's very possible.
I hope you live for a long time, Terry Brooks, but like...
He is old, though. He's getting up there.
You're young.
Yeah. We all die alone, okay? Just a little bit of wisdom for you. What the fuck was I saying?
You were saying...
All I can think is zombie series now.
Oh, yeah. There's a chance it'll be reborn. It was canceled, but he wrote all these books.
So why are we even talking about this right now, right? Because we try to be timely and whatever. Well, this month, let's see, we're recording this in June, and it's coming out in July, I think.
I think so.
So last month for y'all, probably. The second book in his last foursome, his last tetralogy of fantasy books of the Shannara series is coming out. And he said... He may write other bits and pieces. There might be a standalone novel here and there, but like chronologically, this is the end of the story. And so he's on book 2 of 4 of those.
And to be honest, you just said so many words about numbers of books and how they play into each other.
I know.
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
And these epic fantasy authors, they tend to do things like that, right? So we had like this whole Wheel of Time series, but then there were like sub-stories, and then there was like a prequel, and like it's a lot.
Which was surprisingly good, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's a lot to keep up with.
But if you're reading, because I know you always flirt with Wheel of Time, don't read the prequel before you read the series. No. You do not want to do that, because you won't give a shit about anybody. No. Okay. Just putting it out there. If anyone's thinking of starting, do not start with the prequel.
Is it called The Twilight of something or another?
Queen, I don't remember. The Skein of Sevens.
I bought it. I have like...
The Salmon's
so I've read The Eye of the World, the first Wheel of Time book.
Yes.
And I've like started the second book before, and I couldn't tell you what it's called.
Winter's Horn?
Sure.
Maybe.
It's a big endeavor. But
the Horn of Winter.
But every time I see a Wheel of Time book, if I don't have it like at the thrift store, like I'll pick it up. So I actually have quite a bit, but I have the prequel, but I shan't be reading it first.
It's good though. But yeah, it's just not meant to be read before.
So in like 50 years when I finish it, which
exactly
is how long it would take to get through these fucking Shannara books.
Well, but here's the thing though, but they're pretty fast reads though. In the way that they are, and no tea, no shade, kind of formulaic. He does lots of things. I haven't read the whole series. In fact, I've only read the first book, The Sword of Shannara, which is the earliest and the most dated, and I did not like it.
Okay.
I did not continue with the series.
But
it
was
you know
his
me.
first book.
It was, and that's why I'm realizing now is I want to go back and maybe pick up one of the trilogies or tetralogies from later in his writing career and then see if that can get me into it. Because... Well, because, for example, they decided not to do the first book on the TV show because there are, like, no female characters of note. And that's indicative.
Yeah. Which I read that, too. And I actually like that they chose to move on to the second book storyline. But I was also very kind of confused about that because in a lot of fantasy series, you can't just start on the Two Towers.
No.
You don't know what you've missed so much, right? So, like, I think it's so interesting that you can just pick up a story at, like, the middle and then also do prequels and, like books set 500 years in the future and, like, there's all this different stuff. So
embroider this whole world.
It's literally like almost too much for me to understand without just jumping in. So I think I'm going to add some sort of Shannara situation to my next 5 years of like reading lineup because girl, you know I got that long TBR list. But I think I just want to know more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to get it because the fan base of the books is pretty rabid and quite huge.
Which I like. I like to be a part of that kind of thing.
I do too. I love to be rabid with the other zombies. It's all about zombies with me today.
Also, like, again, all my knowledge is from the season 1 of the show that I watch. But there's, like, several plucky female characters that I can, like, relate to and get behind. And there's a love triangle, which I'm all about. And there's family history and destiny and post-apocalyptic things. So there's like so much that I'm like, how have I never read this? You know what I mean? But I don't even like personally know people that are like repping the series. Like I don't have friends that are like ride or die for the Shannara Chronicles.
I definitely think, I doubt you have this pulled up. I definitely don't. But I'm guessing if we were to look at which of these books were on the bestseller list, I think the majority of them would fall in the 80s and 90s. I think that's really where he was the hugest. And I'm kind of talking out my ass here, but just based on our personal experience, we're both huge fantasy lovers. And we've both been able to pretty easily avoid this series, even though there are 30 plus works, right, so far. And it's currently coming out, too. That's the crazy thing, is like, he puts out like a book a year, and I'm not exaggerating.
Girl.
It is shocking. I was going through his bibliography, and I was like, okay, 80, 81, 82, 83. I was like, fuck. And I was like, 84, 85. All new books every year. A new book every year.
He is a writer.
Yes. And then I saw a break. There was like a break of like 5 years. And I was like, oh, thank God. You know, because I was getting a little bit
overwhelmed.
Like, yeah, and a little bit like feeling bad about myself, you know? But then I scrolled down, and that's when he wrote the Landover series, which is his other big series. And he wrote a book a year. He's been doing that for decades now. It's shocking.
Do you know, so there's some really famous authors that use ghostwriters to like either completely write books for them or help them write. Like James Patterson's one of those people. He writes a book or two a year, but he doesn't write them. He has someone else write them. I wonder, and I'm not saying he does this, but I wonder, you know, if he has enlisted that sort of thing.
I'm willing to bet that at least once he's gotten a little bit of help to make a deadline. And I certainly don't throw shade about that, you know. I don't know. That's the real tea.
Because
if we
that's
need to answer that.
So much.
It's just insane.
I mean, God, just like it's so crazy to think of like writing that much. And we've talked about this before. Like a lot of sci-fi authors are very prolific, and it's just overwhelming with like how talented they are and how can they accomplish it and like meeting those deadlines. And these books are not small, right? A lot of fantasy books are 900, 1,200 pages, like. Easily. That's the standard. So that's just crazy.
I mean, his first one is pretty, I don't know exactly the page count. I mean, I could look it up, but it's pretty, I would call it normal size. It's a normal size fantasy novel from the 80s. But as they go on, I'm sure there are longer ones, you know. He's actually said, I read an interview with him where he was like, you know, I would much rather write a 500-page novel than a short story. Because he's written some short stories, but he, like many novel writers, finds it really frustrating to be so contained. Yes.
Yeah. Which I actually get. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Short stories are the hardest thing to write. That's why they so long were like that's the way they winnowed down the writers. They were like, sure, you can write a novel. Sure, you can write a poem, but can you write a short story? And many of us said, no, we cannot. I will see myself out.
You know what? I go through phases where sometimes I love a good like collection of short stories, but for the most part, I would always prefer to read a 500-page novel to a short story. And I don't know why, because I could read so many more short stories in the time it would take me to finish, you know, the fucking Fellowship of the Ring or something.
I mean, to me, it pushes a similar button to binge watching a show. It's something to do with living in a world for longer.
Want more.
Yeah. I much prefer that. I'm with you. Short stories are my least favorite. I would rather read ridiculous, obscure poetry than read short stories most of the time. And I try to read them because there are many great short stories. Yeah. And I've read some that I was very touched by. But it's just not, I don't like it. I don't like to read it. I don't like to write it.
It's not my jam.
Mine neither. Yeah. Mine neither. I want that world building.
Girl, me too. And that's why we are fantasy people.
Ding, ding.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what Shannara is actually about. I culled a couple of sentences about just a general plot overview of this immense network of books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the series blends magic and primitive technology and is set in the Four Lands, which are identified as Earth long after civilization was destroyed in a chemical and nuclear holocaust called the Great Wars. Okay, so the Four Lands are defined by like north, east, south, and west, and basically each area is inhabited predominantly by a species, right? So the elves dominate one
the west,
quarter.
I think.
Yeah, and then you've got like the humans in the south.
In the south, and the little gnome people, little healer gnome people in the east. And then up north is just a bunch of Morgans. I meant goblins.
Demons.
Sorry, yeah.
And,
I get confused sometimes.
Yes, thank you. But I actually love that all the bad people live like super in the north, because they have kind of identified this area being sort of Pacific Northwest of the States and Canada. So they just put all of the like bad people like up in Canada. They're like, you just have the mountains and the glaciers. You live your best life.
It's funny too because I mean, the West Coast is essentially the most fabulous elves, right?
Obviously.
And then to the east, like into the heartland, are like the loser, ugly gnome people. And then the humans are the south, which I don't know how that relates to Mexico, but yeah, Mexicans are human beings. Oh, that relates. Dear President Trump, people from South of America are also human beings. Read Shannara, and you will find out.
He is certainly confused on that.
I just got so mad I burst into a sweat.
Girl,
that fury.
I had one more sentence about the general plot.
Oh, sure, baby.
So by the time we get to the prequel, First King of Shannara, which was written much later, the world had reverted to a pre-industrial state and magic had reemerged to supplement science. So the bulk of the Shannara series happens in this kind of post-apocalyptic nuclear holocaust war, post-war area.
I mean, like 2,000 years later.
So we see things like San Francisco that, you know, was of like a time past, like a broken Golden Gate Bridge and like cliffs like matted over with like vines and buildings dilapidated. But we get to go back in the prequels, which I think is actually, I think the timeline and the staging of his book is like smart, very smart, because it gives you a lot of leeway for like reintroducing kind of what Fear the Walking Dead wanted to do, like how did we get to where we're at, except that I think he does it better probably.
I think you know, right now post-apocalyptic landscapes and like dealing with the fallout of zombies or nuclear bombs,
it's so hot, we love it.
It's everywhere, right? But when he wrote this in 1977, yeah, the sound of you pouring wine is literally the loudest thing I've ever heard.
Excuse me.
It's very important. I'm not mad at you. Thank you, by the way. I mean, I'm not saying he was the first to do it by any means, because he certainly wasn't, because obviously during the Cold War.
But he was ahead of the popularity.
And melding it with fantasy like this
so smart.
Is extremely innovative. And people, when they're dragging him, they never talk about that shit. And to me, that's the most interesting part of the series. And that's maybe when I start, you know, like Word and Void. Let's see, I'm trying to... Okay, so don't you... Okay, I'm sorry. Do you have a blurb about which goes where? Because I was just about to say which one I wanted to start with, and I'm confused.
So I have a kind of lengthy blurb about what the different series are in the Shannara world and how they connect. Do you want me to go ahead and read it?
I do want you to read it, but here's the thing.
Oh, okay.
If a word ends in S, I want you to skip the word.
That's a lot of pressure.
I believe in you.
I'm going to do like the best that I can.
You.
Okay. So, his debut book was The Sword of Shannara, 1977. After finishing 2 sequels to The Sword of Shannara...
You said sequels! You failed the game! Now I have to shave you bald.
Oh, nobody loved my hair!
Okay, let's just hear the information.
Okay. Blah, 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 sequels to Sword of Shannara. Brooks moved on to the series, which would become known as the Landover novels, so he wrote that in the middle of the situation. Then he came back to write a 4-book series titled The Heritage of Shannara. For the next 14 years, he wrote more Landover books. Oh my god, it's a long time. Then he went on to write the World and the Void trilogy. Continuing the Shannara series, Brooks wrote the prequel to The Sword of Shannara, titled The First King of Shannara. God, that word looks weird. He then wrote 2 series, The Voyage of the Jurl Shannara and...
It's hard. And every time I look at Shannara, I'm like, that's not a word. Every single time.
The Voyage of the Girl Shannara and High Druid of Shannara. And recently, he finished a third Genesis of Shannara, which is a trilogy bridging his Word and Void and Shannara series. So he wrote this whole trilogy bridging 3 fucking series. Okay? And then he wrote the 6th book in the Landover series, A Princess of Landover, which was released in 2009. Then he went back to Shannara, created a duology, whatever the fuck that means.
Just 2.
Called Legends of Shannara. Taking place after the events of Genesis of Shannara, which was that trilogy that bridged Word and Void Shannara series.
Good Lord.
And then the first book of that was called Bearers of the Black Staff, which came out in 2010. And then The Measure and the Magic came out in 2011. And then he completed that trilogy with The Dark Legacy of Shannara.
But that's another trilogy, though. The Dark Legacy of Shannara.
The book was called The Measure of Magic. And then he completed a trilogy entitled The Dark Legacy of Shannara, which comprised Wards of Fairy, 2013, Bloodfire Quest, 2013.
Yep, 2.
And Witch Wraith, 2013.
Well, I've got Wards of Fairy, August 2012, and then the other 2 in 2013.
Okay. And then he followed this with the trilogy Defenders of Shannara, which include the High Druid's Blade, July 2014, the Darkling Child, June 2015, and The Sorcerer's Daughter, which came out in 2016. And, according to his website, he's currently working on the final and concluding tetralogy of the Shannara series known as The Fall of Shannara. First book is called The Black Elfstone, released in 2017, 2 forthcoming novels.
And then The Scar Invasion is the one that came out this year,
yes.
June 19th.
Yes.
Just a few days before we're recording. And the thing is, so there's a nuclear apocalypse that destroys everything. 2,000 years later, magic has kind of grown up to take the place of science. Because in the world of Shannara, or of the Shannara series, magic was always there, like in our time now, but it took a backseat because we were all focused on technology. But after the apocalypse, that's when the elves started to come back. They were always here, but they became more known. Anyway, so you've got 2,000 years to the very beginning book, right? And then, as you said, he does the prequels to that and all that stuff. But then, at various times, the Dark Legacy of Shannara takes place 100 years after the events in the High Druid of Shannara trilogy. And then there's another one, The Defenders of Shannara, takes place 100 years after the events in the Dark Legacy of Shannara. So it's this is huge. He's done so much world building. Similar to how Tolkien did with the Silmarillion and all the ages that Middle-earth goes through.
It's
a lot,
a
man.
lot to take in.
It's a lot of fucking books. Lots of words.
And we were talking about, before we started the podcast, how interesting it is that he essentially has spent his entire career since, the 70s, the 60s and 70s, in basically 2 worlds, the Landover series and very predominantly the Shannara world, which again, Shannara is not a person. She is a family name. So I'm also intrigued about how everything can be so centered around one family. They're the fucking Medicis of this fantasy world. They were always important and hold all the cards, but are sometimes dormant, but they'll always come back and get you. I don't know. It's a lot. And how can he focus so intensely on that? Because Tolkien obviously spent a lot of time in Middle Earth and created a lot of things, but even the works that he released are not as there weren't as many of them, right? This
nowhere near as many words written.
Yeah,
total.
This is so many stories set in there, and Tolkien might have been conservative on his publishing, right? We do have some unfinished tales and things that his family is completing with ghostwriters and putting out, but even still, this is a lot. It's a lot,
and the man's still kicking. That's the thing too, is he said that The Fall of Shannara, this final 4-book series, is a chronological ending. But he's left it open whether or not he's going to write more earlier in the series, right? Because he's skipping 100 years here and there. Girl, that man can go back and write 20 more books. I mean, he could. He'd have to live 20 more years. And he is getting old.
One book a year, baby.
Do you know, we were talking about this earlier, speaking of how prolific he is, he wrote the novelization of 2 films, maybe at least 2 films. The first one is Hook. Yes, with Robin Williams. He wrote the novelization of that movie.
Okay.
Which I was like, what?
Weird choice.
The second one, this is going to blow your mind. Novelization of the film, 1999, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
What? Did he really?
Sure enough, he did, girl. Sure enough, he did. Which is kind of crazy because I'm like, girl, how did you write a book out of that mess? But you know how hateful I am, so that's fine.
Oh, by the way, they're like retconning. Never mind, no Star Wars spoilers.
So what just happened, we're going to cut it out, but Morgan definitely just spoiled Solo. So we're going to, if there's something weird that just happened here, where it sounds like Morgan was talking, I just punched her straight in the mouth. That did not happen. It's just editing that makes it sound like that.
And I would never spoil anything because I'm super against it. We'll just talk about that later off.
Okay. So anyway. Oh, as far as why he writes about elves. So I did listen to that TED Talk. It was quite interesting. Went by very fast, which is a sign of a good TED Talk. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he, that being Terry Brooks, was a trial lawyer while he was writing the first Sword of Shannara. And also for quite a few years after that, before he really started focusing on writing.
That's why it took so much time, dude. Being a lawyer's
Probably. Can you imagine? Yeah, I know all about that because I also am a lawyer. That's my excuse. And no, but so he was saying, like, people have asked me for ages why I just don't write like legal thrillers like John Grisham. And he said, well, first of all, he talked about Faulkner, who is very creative in his writing. He talked about Tolkien, who inspired him to write fantasy particularly. But he was also like...
Which, like, to be honest, same.
Oh, samesies, yeah. So everyone in the world raised their left hand, you know?
It me.
Yeah. But he was also like, look, if you think that a John Grisham novel is not fantasy... I can tell you as a trial lawyer, it is more like a fantasy novel than you know, right?
That's how all those crime shows that people know and love, CSI, Law and Order.
Girl, just throw it in the DNA machine.
Girl, what's that one, NCIS, where they have like a goth girl and like the...
Oh, I love her though.
Yeah.
She's gone. I heard she left the show now.
Well,
that goth girl.
I didn't know that show was still on the air, so this is all new information.
Yeah, I don't do any of those goddamn shows. I can't handle it. Yeah. They're boring to me. They're all the same. But anyway, the point is, he was like, look.
It's a different man's fantasy.
Exactly. He was like, look, I'm talking about things that I am genuinely interested in through the lens of fantasy. So he mentioned particularly religious strife, which is, I don't know if it's the first season of the TV show, but they bring in some of that theme in the second season. There's like an Inquisition type thing that happens against magic users. Which I don't think is a spoiler, because I don't know where or if that ever happens in the books, right? Because the TV shows and the books are vastly different.
Makes sense.
Vastly different. But he also, you know, in the first season of the TV show and also in the first books, without spoiling anything, they are fighting to protect a magic that is protecting their world, but which is dying. And so he really connected that extremely explicitly in this TED Talk to global warming. And, you know, we're doing something that's destroying the magic of our environment. So a hero needs to come in and may have to sacrifice a lot in order to save the entire world. But for him, this is a conversation about global warming. It's not actually a conversation about the fucking tree with the red leaves and the boo-ba-bee-boo, the demons, or whatever. You know what I mean? And I think that's what most fantasy writers do. And that's why it's nice to see fantasy coming out of the literary ghetto and being treated as the literature that it is, you know? Anyway, that was my soapbox moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's Harry Potter's a really great example, right? There are a lot of kids, people in the world who are restricted from reading Harry Potter because of magic and witchcraft and other nefarious things that adults have determined that children should not be a part of. But there are
Praise his lad.
Praise be. May the fruit open. But there are so many life lessons and parallels and comparisons and positivity, like, embedded in that, right? The Dementors being a great example for symbolizing depression, like sucking the life and the happiness and the joy out of you until you are soulless and you're just literally a zombie who is living a life worse than death, and ways to prevent that. And, like, of course, like, the general good versus evil, and aligning yourself with, like, friends that, you know, support you and live the life that
even if they're not good at anything you can ascertain. Run. Still, the fact that he was loyal and loved Harry made him a very important weapon in the fight against the Dark Lord. And Ron was fucking useless. So that means something.
But I have said this before, and I'll say it again. Ron has the best role to play. He does the bare minimum, and he gets the equal amounts of glory. If I had to be one character, girl, I would be a Ron Weasley.
Wait. Ron gets equal amounts of glory?
As Hermione.
Well, but then Hermione goes on to then marry Ron, but also become Minister of Magic. Now, what does Ron do?
He gets everything she gets, but secondarily and with none of the effort.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Anyway, and he just eats all day and it looks great. But fantasy has long had, you know, themes like that and sent powerful messages, which really resonated with us as children. And, like, quite frankly, has, like, shaped us to be the people that we are today as people who love fantasy and support equality and
are right in every way.
Which we were also talking about for the podcast. Like, we can't help that. We just think that our opinions make more sense.
And they do.
Looking at you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Factual.
Can't eat at my restaurant.
Ooh, I kick her out of my red hen. I kick her out my red rooster. I don't let her in my red barn. And you know what? This state isn't even red anymore. Yeah. It's purple.
This is not a communist podcast, just as like a disclaimer.
I did say, it was the red hen, though, that she got kicked out of. Sarah, we're talking about Sarah Huckabee Sanders getting kicked out of that restaurant, which is big news this week, but by the time you listen to it, she probably will have, like, grown an extra head, and, like, all politicians will be giant spider people, and we'll just be like, meh.
And they'll still be polling at 90% with the Republican Party.
Yeah, exactly. Republicans will be like, well, he's a giant spider person, but he passed the tax cuts.
Oh, girl, he put those kids in cages like we asked him to.
Exactly, so we can suck out their juicy innards. Okay, I'm having a mental breakdown.
We're, like, so political.
Well, we're hot right now. Everybody's political these days.
But we also really like fantasy, and we think you should.
So let's talk about the TV show Queen Bee.
Okay.
So here's how we broke it down. I tried to watch this before we were ever going to do it on the podcast.
Oh, you did?
I did, and I watched 3 or 4 episodes, and I did not hate it, but I just lost it. You know what I mean? Something new came out, and I just never came back to it.
Because, girl, there's too much.
There's too much. What did you think, though? And then I watched some of season 2, but I hated it. But we'll get to that. What did you think of season 1?
This is real fucking talk right here. This is real people. Oh, yeah? Real life. This is my real world. Ooh. I didn't know this existed. I didn't know this was a TV show that was available for me to freely watch on Netflix.
This is your real world.
Until you were like, listen, we're going to talk about this thing on the podcast. And like I always do, I said, okay, because I did not have a better idea for what we would discuss this week. And I said, sure, I'll watch this embarrassing thing and I will lie to people about it and I will be embarrassed and I will hide it from my husband. I will create a new profile. I don't even want to talk about it. Because like you said, life's too short and I don't want people to know that I watch shitty, crappy things like Pretty Little Liars, which I totally watched the whole thing of and I'm totally embarrassed about.
No, don't be.
So I started the Shannara Chronicles under this pretext. It's an MTV show, right? Season 1, MTV. That does not bode well for me.
No.
That is not my station.
No.
That is not my thing. Okay, so I started episode 1. I said, okay. I see what they're putting out here.
She said, this is my real life.
I said, I'm intrigued. And I swear to God, I blinked and 10 episodes were gone, girl. I was feeling it. I was entranced by it. It started as background TV. It held my attention. I will say it was not thoroughly flushed out in the storyline.
Did you say flushed out or fleshed out? Because I do think it was a bit flushed out.
Okay, I'm going to pretend like I know the difference from that right now. I feel like it could have been more full, is how I will rephrase that.
I Fair enough.
Okay, so I ended up actually super feeling season 1. I get why the network didn't re-pick it up. I get why it was not a show for MTV. Because to me, it had the feeling of, it had a pretty decent budget, from what I could tell.
Oh, yeah. It's gorgeous.
It wasn't shittily made. The actors were of a pretty good caliber for the most part. The king was fucking John Rhys Davies of Gimli fame in Lord of the Rings. So, super well known. He didn't come at a cheap price. I mean, he's not a prolific actor, but still.
Can I just tell you, every time I see John Rhys Davies or hear his name, I think of that story they talk about in the appendices where they all go to dinner and he's like, yes, we'll have 14 roast chickens for the table. Yes, we'll have 3 geese and then 14 bowls of blood pudding. And
well, Gurley's like 9 feet tall. He can eat it all.
He can, yes. But he's such a, larger-than-life,
boisterous,
old-school actor. Yeah. He's good as the king.
I think so, too. King. He doesn't do a lot. They don't have him.
It's a small part.
But he's great. Okay, and then there's, essentially 3 main characters. So, Will, who I didn't realize until the very end of the season was apparently the main character. Not in my opinion, but in the eyes of the series, he's the main character. Will is half elf, half human, fully... I don't know, douchey bro sort of look. I looked at some pictures of him in real life, and he's a super, MTV is his favorite network.
Yeah, he looks like a... Well, he's gorgeous, but in a very, kind of a basic...
way.
Yeah, like a surfer douche to me. I know him from something, though.
He's more attractive as this elf person than, in real life, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which is often my opinion, so, we'll just go with that. The girl who plays Amberly, who is the princess, who I thought was the main character of this show, which apparently she's not. She has several acting credits to her name. She was in an episode of Downton Abbey that was a Christmas special, which meant it was a 2-hour episode. And I actually, as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my god, I super remember her. She played one of the American people because... Lady Cora's family is American. Anyways, she came over with the American people. So I super remember her. And she's very, dainty and elf-like. So I feel like she was super well cast as an elfin princess. I was really feeling her. She had, very good vibes for that, I thought.
I liked her. I thought she was... Actually, I'm just sorry. I just agree with everything you said.
Thanks. Yeah, she was cute. I mean, she wasn't oh my god, best actress ever. But, she crushed it, I thought.
Yeah, she was good.
And then the other main character was another lady character whose name was...
Her name is... Okay, just real quickly. This Will guy, what's his name? Butler?
Will, what's his face?
He was in Arrow. Austin Butler.
Yes, he was in Arrow. That's
what I know him from. Because I was looking intently. I was like, I know him from something. And all I saw was Disney bullshit.
And the druid... That guy, he was also in season 1 of Arrow. He played the guy on the island with Oliver.
Yeah, Manu Bennett.
Yes!
I love Manu Bennett.
Yeah,
I hope I'm saying his name right. I assume I am. He plays Al-Anon in this.
Al-Anon,
he's the best part of this show, I think.
Oh, you think
personally.
so?
I do. The other girl is named... Oh my god, the last episode they kept saying her name over and over. Atracia?
Atraria.
Something like that. She has a, spoiler alert, she has a lesbian romance in season 2. Awesome.
I watched...
And her girl says her name 4,000 times.
I watched half of episode 1 of season 2 earlier before I came over here. And the girl that's her love interest is in season 2 of Riverdale, which is another trashy show I like. Actually, season 2 of Riverdale was absolutely garbage. But that girl also played a sexy lesbian in that show, too. So she's got that look. She's that sexy lesbian girl. That's her thing. That's totally her thing. So Eritrea or whatever, she...
yeah, that's her name, Eritrea.
In season 1 is the third main character. She's a human, and she is kind of the triangle of the love interest between those 3 characters. She kind of reminds me of, in Les Miserables, the girl...
Eponine?
Eponine.
Yeah,
she reminds me of Eponine.
Yes.
And so that actress that plays her, actually, her her breakout role was as the little girl in Pan's Labyrinth. She's the little girl in Pan's Labyrinth.
Shut your mouth.
I can't.
With that black magic.
Yes.
You shut your big toad mouth.
She beat out 1,000 other little girls who auditioned. She didn't even need a second audition. They said, this little girl, she's got it.
And she was amazing in that.
They rewrote the script to form to her age because the script was originally written for like an 8-year-old girl, but she was like 11. And so they rewrote a couple things to fit her.
That is insane.
Yeah.
That is insane. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize it. Now, that was in 2006, so she's grown up a lot
very grown up since then.
She hasn't done... I mean, she's done stuff. She's worked, but I'm looking through her...
So she's done more things in, like, the Latina sphere because she is a Latina actress. So this is kind of one of her... This is probably her most well-known role besides Pan's Labyrinth in the States. She's done, like, some other little things, but... I think that she's good and that she has some things to offer, and she's pretty diverse in her skills, I think. I don't think this is her strongest, like, role. I think she could do better in something else, and she did the best she could with this role.
I agree with you. I think, I'll be perfectly frank with you right here. You cannot polish a turd. And the dialogue in this show, I'm not coming for it. Because I see, we were talking about this before we start recording. To me, this show... As I was watching it, I was like, Morgan and Sarah would love this show because it reminds me of shows like The Vampire Diaries. It gives me that kind of CW feel. And that makes sense because it was the audience they were really going for with the MTV season, because it switches seasons next season, you know, is like, you know, late teens. Yeah. So they wanted the romance. They wanted the millennial feel. And you can even notice that in the sound design. Like one moment it's like an epic, like instrumental. And then all of a sudden... They're, like, angsty, and it's playing, like, some kind of... weird pop song, and they're, like, shooting arrows, and you're like, girl, what is this? But that was very on purpose.
They also do... The CW does this really well with a lot of shows that they do. They reworked popular songs into the melodies of just, like, instrumental things as well, which the CW does a ton in, like, Rain and Jane the Virgin and, like, other popular shows, the Vampire Diaries things that they have, all of which are, like, my shows. Like, the CW is, like, my fucking network right now. Like, the last, like, 3 years or 4 years.
Well, and you know what? And that's why I'm saying I'm not coming for you or the show, even though I did not like it at all. Yeah. But it's just not my jams. I'm more of, like, my kind of trash is, like, Real Housewives or... like all the trashy comic book bullshit, which actually I've fallen out of. I'm totally behind on everything. Of stuff. It's just too much. I'm just overwhelmed. But I see why some people would like this, and it seems like you did like it overall.
So, to be honest, season 1, I was, like, pretty into it. There were, like, a couple of moments, a couple of spans that were super background, like, TV for me. Like, I was super multitasking, didn't super have to pay attention. There's some cheesy things with, like, the demons and the goblins and, like, the trolls, like, what they did for CG. I think they had a good budget. They did the best that they could. They delivered pretty well in most aspects, and they had a lot to offer for, like you said, like tween, teen, young, like lady, millennial type people that are interested in like magic, love triangles, quest for destiny. Like it fulfilled all of those things, held my attention. Again, I haven't seen season 2. Like you said, season 1 was an MTV show, didn't make it, got picked up by Spike, yes. Which, to be honest, I would have thought was a sports thing. I don't even know what that channel is.
Spike... Queen, I don't even know either, to be honest. Let me tell you, though, I know that the Spike demographic... I guess I could just click on Spike and see where it takes me. The Spike demographic is more like actually what our age is. So, like, young professionals, early to mid-30s, liberal, but, like... not super activist-y. Essentially us. I mean, if you were just to look at us on paper, we're both different people than that, and everyone is, but, okay, well, I clicked on this Spike thing, and all I see is the Nashville Network. I don't know what that's about. Okay. Fuck Tennessee. But anyway, so I definitely know that in season 2, which, to be perfectly honest, I watched about half of, I just hated it. I like season 1 more than season 2. Season 2, it became very plot heavy, but there was so much plot. It was like later Walking Dead. Or no, that's not a good example. It was just, there were so many things happening at any given moment, and I just felt like either things didn't get tied up and resolved, or they got resolved too neatly and too pat away. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So they really tried to focus on plot more, and I think it totally backfired. They did it very messily. And, I don't know. People are of both sides online. What's the word? Polarized, I guess, is fine. They're polarized online. People either like season 1 or season 2. It seems hardly anyone likes both.
Well, that doesn't bode well because I liked season 1.
Yes. I dislike both.
I think I'm going to give season 2 a try as like a background show. Because I love to have a show that I don't have to pay too much attention to, but can like also still follow. And it's kind of hard to find that show. And season 1 was really good for that.
And I have to tell you, as far as issues of diversity, showing people of color, strong female roles, queer people, season 2 does all that very well. Season 1 does it here and there, some. But season 2, I thought, did a great job with it. Now, that being said, the main 2 characters are still white people. And the main protagonist is still a white, blonde, straight man.
So he's the main person, and then is Eritrea still the second person? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, she's a Latina lady. Mm-hmm. So it's like
I guess that's true. That's true. She's Latina, but she's white passing, though.
But still,
she looks white. When you look at the screen, you're like, okay, something like that. But fair enough.
Okay.
And there are lots of other important characters in the series, and many of them are people of color. They do a pretty good job with representation.
Look, can you spoil this for me? No, never mind.
We'll ask the question, and then I'll give you the answer silently if it's a spoiler.
Well, okay, so at the end of season 1, some things happen with Amberly.
Oh, I see. That was the question.
Sometimes? Okay, well.
Yeah. And there's a lot of magic in a series like this. This is one of those series kind of like comic books where don't assume that any death is ever permanent. And I'm not just, or even necessarily talking about Amberly. Is that her name? Amberly. I'm talking about like everyone in the entire fucking series. It's just like when Superman dies and you're like, girl, how long is she going to be dead this time? Because you know she's coming back.
One fucking half of a movie and then she's back.
Exactly. And then she flies out of space and punches somebody in the face.
Oh, did I ever tell you we finally watched the Justice League and it was awful?
Oh, I'm not shocked. Is it rentable now?
Yeah, we rented it.
I'll probably rent it soon.
It was legit garbage.
Like really bad.
It was like legitimate garbage.
You know what I watched?
Like millions of dollars of garbage.
Oh. I'm not shocked. I mean, that's what we expect out of DCU EU right now. DCEU? No.
DCU.
DC.
No.
Universe. Entertainment Universe, yeah.
EU.
Okay. DCEU. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, I watched something that was not shitty last night.
What was it?
Logan. I finally watched that.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I sat in my bathtub until the water was like freezing cold because I didn't want to get out because I was washing the bathtub.
Good. Did you cry?
That was amazing. I did. When not, it's an end of life kind of show. Everyone's old. I'm trying not to spoil it, but y'all have probably already seen it. But when the first death happens, I was horrified. Some of the latter deaths after that, I was kind of inoculated to because the first one had scarred me deeply.
That little girl was good.
She was amazing. And actually, I think that's why I'm thinking, because we were talking about Latina actresses.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's actually Latina, but she plays a Latina in the show. But that was an amazing movie.
So then they released like Logan Noir, where they did it in black and white, but I haven't seen that version of it.
I don't care to. I mean, Logan's almost like, and you may have said something similar to this, almost like Boys Don't Cry or Requiem for a Dream in a way. It was a great movie. I loved it. I recommend it. I don't know that I want to. It was unendingly bleak. And it was a soul bleakness too. Like everyone's soul was broken, and it was very upsetting.
It was like the Wolverine that Hugh Jackman was like born to play, though.
Oh, he was amazing. And Patrick Stewart, amazing. I wonder if Patrick Stewart's tired of playing dying men, though, because he plays dying men a lot. The older he gets, the more they're like, can you pretend to die? And he's like, girl, I'm gonna be dead. And like 2.5 Jean-Luc Picard.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is we're very tangential this episode, but you know why? It's because we didn't read the books, and I think the books are really the gold. And we watched the TV show, and it's like.
But we do have some more talk. But yes, let's talk about Star Trek for a minute.
Just very briefly, Jean-Luc Picard coming back as captain on a new season or series of Star Trek. What else do you know about that, Morgie?
Nothing. And actually, I was wondering, is it going to be on that CBS bullshit again?
Probably, yeah.
Because I'm upset about that because I couldn't see the first one because you have to have a CBS all access login or whatever the fuck that means. Yep. Then I'm going to sell it to Hulu. Then I'm going to sell it to Netflix. How am I supposed to see it?
They will eventually, but who knows when.
Girl,
yeah, I don't know,
I'm mad about that.
I'm not too certain about that. So wait, is the other one over now?
Yeah. Been over.
There's only like 1 or 2 seasons, or right? Something.
Oh, you mean the whole season? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if this announcement was like a future thing.
Okay.
How long do Star Trek seasons usually last? Like 5 or
Voyager
6?
and Next Generation and Deep Space Nine are all around 7 seasons.
Yeah, I
all around.
I don't think they'll be going that long.
Well, the last one that they didn't go that long. The one before the one that's currently on CBS, I didn't watch it at all. But it was only on for like 4 or 5. And then this one, if this one's over now, the most recent one.
Well, I don't know. I'm
very confused about that. Well, anyway, okay. So what else? So do you have any questions or like what's the jams?
So, okay, season 1, MTV. Season 2, Spike. The show is canceled now. And the only hope that it has is that it gets either picked up by another network or by a non-traditional network.
Why don't we pick it up here at Beauty and the Bitch?
Let's do it!
Let's do it! We'll buy the rights!
Yay! Speaking of that, if you could send some money our way.
Oh, you need what, like 3-4 million?
Yeah.
Ain't no thing, baby. Ding, ding.
So it's a possibility that it could get picked up by Netflix or Hulu.
Amazon, maybe. Though Amazon is doing the big Lord of the Rings.
Might be conflicting.
So that's a lot of money and a similar look. So
yeah, and because it already has 2 seasons out, whoever picks it up needs to do it fast, do it now. Yep. Get contracts out for these people. Yeah, figure out like what they're doing. But again, they could do a thing where they skip ahead to the next trilogy or quartet or whatever. Yeah, and they could easily do that and just kind of have it a name to pick up the fan base. But again, I haven't finished season 2, so I don't know how it ends, if it's super cliffhanger or if it's fine. Because season 1 was a super cliffhanger.
You know what it reminds me of is the way a video game ends when they make room for the sequel. So, like, in my favorite video game of all time, Shining Force on the Sega Genesis, after you beat Dark Dragon and his castle sinks into the sea, you think that the hero is dead, but then he wakes up in a strange land, and they're like, look at this traveler. And then you're like, dun 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 dun, and you walk off into the sunset. It's very much that kind of feel, without naming
checks out.
names.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, what sort of network does this belong in? Because perhaps if it had been given a different life, it could have had a different life expectancy. It might have had more money, better outlook, better audience. You know what I mean? Because never in a million years was I ever going to watch this on MTV because, first of all, I don't have cable, so I'm never going to see it. Second of all, it moved to Spike Network. I didn't even know what that was, as previously demonstrated.
Yeah, and when I looked it up, I just saw a bunch of words that I didn't understand and clicked away. Yeah.
They're not reaching the kind of audience they could be grabbing, right? Because for me, for sure, this is the kind of thing, if, say, the Sci-Fi Network had been drumming it up. I'm not, like, the biggest Sci-Fi Channel person because, again, I don't have cable, but Sci-Fi Channel is really good about communicating the projects that they're working on. They went to town promoting The Magicians, which I was already going to be on board with, but still, the audience that they were able to cull for The Magicians because of their marketing campaigns were insane.
Quite a popular show. And by the way, we told you so.
We told you.
Very first episode. Hello, goodbye.
You're welcome.
Ooh. I'm sorry, my coccyx hurts.
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
my tailbone.
Butt.
Yeah, that's my tailbone. It hurts because I have no butt at all.
Oh, he's so skinny.
Well, I am skinny. The question is, skinny legend, by the way. The question is, like, how do they want to spin it? Do you know what I mean? Because I kind of think ABC, CBS, NBC, if they want to get into this epic fantasy game with, like, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead,
which, honestly, they
Lord
should
of
be
the
trying to
Rings.
compete with.
They should be, because it is a booming genre right now. I think that they could take the Shannara series and make it into a more or less PG, but still very beautiful and, like, well-written series. And I think that would be kind of nice, to be honest, because... you know, of course, I love gore, I love sex, I love cuss, I'm all about those things, I don't mind at all. But if you think about a lot of the big epic fantasies, if you have a 9-year-old kid or something, I wouldn't watch The Walking Dead with a 9-year-old. I definitely wouldn't watch Game of Thrones with a 9-year-old. Or maybe I would. I don't know. I don't think about parenting, but I think most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fantasy these days, in a lovely way, is made for adults. I'm all about that. But I think it would be nice to maybe throw the family-friendly crowd an epic fantasy bone. And frankly, the Shannara series is very tame, as far as I can tell. So
that's what I was going to say is, like, if, and again, I haven't read the books, but if there is a sex factor there, which I also don't think that there is, if there was one, I think Netflix would be the home for it because they are really good with diverse action situations, but they haven't really brought their fantasy game, like, too much. I mean, what's the one with the kids and the upside down? Oh,
Stranger Things.
So Stranger Things brings it the most.
That's the closest. But that's besides a very specific, like, horror type of fantasy.
If there was, like, a sex factor,
science fiction,
I think Netflix would be a good home for it. But I kind of don't feel like there is like, as far as, like, going deeper into, like, the sexual relationships of people the way you do in, like, Game of Thrones. I don't feel like there is that there, and I also don't know that it's necessary. So in my opinion, I think it belongs on a free network that's available to everyone, like you said, like ABC,
PBS, shit.
CW is my jam. They like to push the envelope with the sex factor on a lot of their shows, so I think that'd be a good place for it. Fox might be a good place for it.
Yeah, because Fox doesn't have anything in the running for fantasy, does it? Right now?
I mean, they got rid of Gotham, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what else they're doing. I don't watch Fox.
Wait, is Gotham canceled?
It's not
on
Fox.
Season.
It's on, isn't it going to, like, ABC or something?
Yes, it got, like, sold. Yeah, you're right. You're true.
Yeah. So, honestly, I don't know what's on Fox. I don't watch any shows on Fox.
I don't either, actually. I have no idea what their program is.
So maybe fuck Fox.
That's funny, because growing up, it was all Fox all the time, wasn't it?
The Simpsons, and, like, I think Arrested Development was a Fox show. Yeah, a lot of the good stuff was. But I think it needs to find a home on a network that's accessible for more people, which is why I think people didn't watch it on MTV, because you have to have a specific cable package for that, and that's not the world we live in anymore. We don't do that. We don't watch MTV.
On demand. I demand it now. I demand it on.
Same.
Yes.
So I think it needed a new home, and honestly, I hope it does find a new home, because maybe season 2 sucked, but I thought season 1 was very promising.
Here's an idea. They pick it up season 3 on the Food Channel. Focus on the lembas bread.
There is, for real, like, not in a joking way, but, like, we should propose to one of those food channels or the travel channels, like, a fantastical fantasy food cooking show where we do none of the cooking but all of the eating.
Yes. Oh, just like we'll be like the 2 women on the Great British Bake Off,
which I don't watch, but I'm familiar with.
Morgan, you've got to watch that. Are you fucking
literally
kidding me?
I had brunch with Sassy and some friends, and this is the literal hour conversation I just had. Why am I not watching the show?
Here's the thing. Now, don't forget, you signed a contract agreeing to this just a few minutes ago. For every day that goes by that you don't start that show, I'm going to pinch you.
Oh, well, I'm going to just go home and watch it tonight then.
Well, but then you have to watch another episode tomorrow until you're all caught up.
Every day?
Every day, or you get pinched.
Oh, but I have to go to work. Just kidding.
Hey-oh, unemployed.
Yeah, we'll talk more about my unemployment later.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Morgie, I feel like, just very briefly, because I said I wanted to talk about this. So we've mentioned a few different times, Terry Brooks' other big series, which is... Yes. The Magic Kingdom of Landover series.
Which means literally nothing to me. Tell us everything.
Well, it is essentially... It's 6 books, published between 1986 and 2009. And it was a book that I read when I was 14. And I read it at a time when I was quite enamored, thank you, of Piers Anthony. Who I think I've talked about on the podcast before. He wrote a bunch of books, but my favorites were his Incarnations of Immortality books, which were about these human beings who take on these immortal positions like death, war, time, nature.
That sounds familiar.
God and the devil. I've probably talked about before, probably over the years, many times to you. When we first met, I was probably in my depths of, like, loving that series the most. Anyway, the point is, though, Piers Anthony was very much like, that series anyway, was really like urban fantasy. Almost like proto-Neil Gaiman in a way. In a very real way. And to me, this series, this Magic Kingdom of Landover series from Terry Brooks is in that genre because... Or it has that flavor, I should say. Because it's about a middle-aged Chicago lawyer whose wife and unborn son died in a car wreck.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's very sad. And so he's super depressed. And he gets this fancy, like, Christmas catalog. Kind of like, what's that real ritzy store in New York? Like the fanciest department store. And you can get the catalog delivered to your house. And they'll be like, gold, shoes made out of pure gold. And an island. God. And... I forget now.
I literally have no idea.
I can't remember the name of the store right now, so I know that's irritating for all listeners, and they're probably all screaming at the radio right now. But so. I know our friend Nikki, who's a big listener, a big lover of the show, I know that she says she screams at us a lot when we can't remember names. Not like in a mean, but she's like, no, it's
she's like, it's this thing.
Yeah, we need her. We need her help.
She's like, it's Fordham and Masons, you faggot.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so I've signed up for that catalog various times, and they refuse to send it to me because they know there's no way my ass can. I literally signed up for it like 4 times.
Oh, girl, they run a credit check on your ass.
They probably really do. Anyway, so this guy named Ben, he gets this catalog, and he sees inside it for $1 million a magical kingdom. And he says, this is ridiculous, but on the other hand, he hates his life.
That's some Sky Mall bullshit.
Yeah, girl. He got that, and he got a warmer for his dog's feet. For his same purchase,
that checks out.
Yeah. And so anyway, he goes to this place, Landover, and he finds out that yes, it does exist, but it's in a state of disarray because they've been trying to find a king, an owner.
Fillory.
It's very like Fillory, except ridiculous in that 80s, early 90s way. Do you know what I mean? That certain kind of ridiculousness.
I'm so intrigued right now. The transition from like sad lawyer whose family died to like owning a kingdom.
Ben, the king of the kingdom.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he's got like a court wizard who's a useless fuck up named Quester Thews, who's amazing. And his little helper guy is named Abernathy, but Quester turned him into a dog a long time ago. Can't turn him back. Makes so he's sense. Like a talking dog. And they're
honestly a better way to live life for some.
Hey, hallelujah to that, And he falls in love with like this dryad type girl, and they have this whole thing. I mean, it was good. I loved it actually because it was urban fantasy in a way because he was bringing city life with him into this magical world, and it was like that clash that's so satisfying to watch. It's a good series. The first one's called it's not a very good title, but Magic Kingdom for Sale - Sold. That's what it's called. And I loved it as a young teenager. So I do recommend that actually, especially if you want to read some Terry Brooks, but you're like, girl,
too much for
I'm just so overwhelmed for Shannara.
Again, Shannara, who is not a person.
Shannara, who doesn't even fucking exist.
She's never going to be there. If there's not a character fucking just named straight up Shannara in this next end of the fucking world, I'm going to burn the place to the ground.
There wasn't no Shannara at the grocery store.
Girl?
I didn't see no Shannara at the post office.
Or in the castle where she probably belongs.
Yeah, so I turned to my man. I said, who the fuck is Shannara
and he said, I didn't fuck her. We didn't get married secretly.
And I said, oh, you got defensive fast. And then we took that conversation behind closed doors.
And now he's dead.
Well, things happen.
Oh, I'm reading Fight Club right now. He's just laughing. I'm reading Fight Club for the first time.
Oh, Lord.
And he says a lot, these things happen. And I try to, like, apply that to my life when, like, because it does just, like, things just, like, happen and you just, like, know things. And you can't remember how you know them or where they come from or why things are happening. You're just like, you know what? These things happen.
Yeah.
And that's so true to life.
After a while, you're just caught in the cobwebs of life and you're like, well, I don't know. I know that for some reason.
Maybe you can get a magazine and buy a kingdom.
Right? Maybe that's what's coming next. I'm down.
I'm not mad.
I would be well, I was going to say it'd be a great king of a fantasy world, but I've learned from Elliot in The Magicians. Well, if I have to fuck a lady to be king, well, that's not right. As long as
you have a Margot by your side.
That's true. Sarah.
God damn it.
Did I tell you, though? No, seriously. Just very, very briefly. When I posted our Magicians episode on Reddit, I think I told you this, someone commented and said that you sound just like Margot.
I'll take it.
Your voice sounds like Margot.
And I'm happy.
Yeah, what's her name? Bichelle.
Her real name?
Yeah, it's something Bichelle. It's something Bichelle.
She's, like, so fabulous that I'm, like, legitimately, like, what a great compliment.
Look, anyone who can rock a jeweled eye patch is my friend. And that's just
she does look so cute in her little eye patches.
Cute.
So fierce. Love them. I love them.
I do too.
Margot and Elliot.
Yeah, I can't wait.
They're like life goals.
We get to talk about season 3 soon.
I think it comes back in January, so in the not too distant future.
Yeah, pretty soon. So anyway, that was it. I just wanted to put a little plug in for the Magic Kingdom of Landover because it is really good. Very different, but good.
Yeah, and like what a step away from the Shannara series.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Like, and I guess maybe he got to apply a little bit of his urban living and his experience as being a lawyer. So like he did find a home for that knowledge.
And it's much funnier too.
Oh, that's good.
None of the books I think in the Shannara series are specifically funny.
Fantasy's often lacking in humor. Not for the authors of today. A lot of the people that we love and idolize, they do a pretty good job with humor. I think J.K. Rowling does a great job with humor.
Brandon Sanderson's
Patrick Rothfuss.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, there's really good elements of humor. So that we've come a long way to incorporate that for sure.
But I do have a soft spot for that zany 80s, 90s humor. Like, Piers and Anthony did a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like,
there was this author named Susan Cooper that I was really into. She's a very like tween writer. She wrote this series called, I think it was called Oversea Under Stone, and it was about these kids who had like some sort of tragic life situation that were like confronted with the magical world like you are, and who were very like laissez-faire about it. We're like, oh, whatever, magic, who cares? And then they kind of like were coaxed into like being a part of it. And I remember reading that and being like, what would you do if like you were like literally just confronted with like, here's the magic, here's the world, it's everything you ever wanted, but you're kind of like depressed because life is happening around you? Would you just be like, you know what, I just kind of like don't have the energy for that right now?
Right.
Because it does seem exhausting.
Oh, very much so. 100. You know, I would always prefer to be flazé-da about things. That's my favorite thing in the world, but you know me, I'm super neurotic, and in any situation, I'm gonna get stressed out.
You're like, where's the encyclopedia? I must learn.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Do you have anything else about beautiful Shannara, my friend?
Again, she's not a person.
She's not real.
Shocking.
She's not real.
Shocking. I do think I'm going to try to get into it at some point. I don't know what capacity or what that'll look like. In the meantime, hope the show gets picked back up. I'm going to give season 2 a chance. If it sucks, I don't know if I can do the whole thing, but I'd love for it to find a home because I think that it has a lot to give.
Yeah, and for Terry Brooks' sake, I would love for it to be, because it got pretty badly panned. Season 1 got panned by critics. Season 2 just finished recently, I guess.
2017, I think.
Yeah, there weren't enough Rotten Tomatoes reviews for it even to have a... Did you just spill wine all over yourself, Morgan? Don't worry, I won't tell anybody you just spilled wine all over yourself.
God damn
all
it.
Down your front. Your nipples are out! No, now I'm just exaggerating. But I will say season 1 got a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow, I actually find that shocking because I've seen far worse things.
Yeah. But you know what? I think on Rotten Tomatoes, they don't have any love for that kind of trash. I've noticed that over time. It's like, that's just not there. Critics tend to not like it. They don't see the...
Look, every show is not The Handmaid's Tale, y'all.
Girl, and it shouldn't be.
Because that's depressing.
That is so hard to watch.
But very good.
I haven't finished season 2.
Me neither.
I stopped. I had to take a break.
I only watched like 3 or 4 episodes, and I was just real bummed. I was real bummed.
And when they told us it was just going to get worse, I was like, okay, and I tried to get ready, but I can't. It's too much.
Yeah, and you can't binge it. It's not a bingeable thing.
No.
You got to spread it out across like weeks, months even.
Yep, and do a few Klonopins in between. Help you forget. Klonopin.
Man, I knew some kids in college that like lived on Klonopin.
Yeah? Why they're numbers?
Girl.
I don't think I've ever actually done Klonopin. Some years are kind of blurry and I'm can't be so certain, but I don't remember right now ever doing Klonopin. What does that do? Is it a barbiturate? Is it a tranquilizer?
Girl, I don't know.
Is Klonopin Special K? No, that's ketamine. Never mind.
Special K? That's a cereal.
Yes, it is. A cereal that's been sprinkled with like horse tranquilizer or something. Elephant tranquilizer.
K-hole.
Yes!
Ketamine is a horse tranquilizer.
Yes. Oh, ketamine. Yes. That's Special K.
But last non sequitur story. But, our good friends Allison and MJ, their little daughter Gwenny, she got hurt. Oh, she pulled like an iron, not hot, but like an iron off of like a top shelf, like by the cord onto her face.
Oh,
and she had to get,
baby.
Yeah, she's fine. She had to get stitches, her first stitches. And they gave her fucking ketamine at the hospital. And Allison said the whole time she was just like, baby G's in a K-hole. Like, what do you do? They give your baby, like, fucking ketamine.
Did they film this small baby on K? Because I would like to see that video. That sounds funny as hell.
She needs to remember it later in life.
Yes,
baby's first stitches, baby's first K-hole.
Yes!
And not her last of either.
Look at you cursing this child.
Parenthood looks fun.
Oh. Just take some ketamine. That's essentially the experience of parenthood, I've heard.
Cool.
Yeah. A little bit of meth, maybe.
Oh, girl.
For the stress.
Get hype. All right. Well, thanks for coming today to talk about Terry Brooks and watching some of the Shannara Chronicles, even though you hated it.
Oh, you're welcome. You know what? You're welcome.
You're welcome. America, goodbye.
Overall, I'm glad it exists. Look, I want to read the books at some point. It just hasn't been for me yet. I'm not surprised the TV show got canceled. I am sorry because I know there are fans of it. And I just want more fantasy. It's just like whenever I see queer people, like, I'm very controversially not a fan of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, this reboot that they're doing. Because I just think it's regressive and boring, but that's just me. And I understand people disagree. It's totally cool. I'm still happy to see queer people on TV, though. And that's the way I feel about fantasy. Even if it's fantasy I don't like, I'm like, well, girl, at least it's fantasy. I won't watch it, but somebody's watching it, and that's good.
Yeah, actually, I feel that. I feel the same. Like, it's good. It helps us progress and build our community.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the meantime, you know where you can follow us. We're on social media at Beauty and the Bitch or at BNBcast all across the board. You can check us out on YouTube where we not only have our podcast episodes except for one, but what else do we have, Mickey?
We also have Let's Queer Witcher 3 coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. Right now I'm really feeling the story, I have to tell you. There's been some domestic abuse recently that I got to go off on.
Oh, shit.
And those of you who know the game probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Were you doing the domestic abuse?
No, never, of course.
Someone else. Okay.
No, never, of course. But I did have to kind of make decisions about how to deal with this domestic abuser. No, it's really good. It's really actually heating up, and I think I might be further along in the game than I realized.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I think I said last episode that I'm like a third of the way or something. I think I'm inching towards 45%. So
dope.
Yeah, and it's I make myself laugh all the time, who's shocked, but I think other people will find it enjoyable too.
Yeah, so be sure to check that out for hours of entertainment. And you can follow me personally on the gram at Morganized Mess. Check out my website, morganizedmess.com. Mickey, where can
you
can
find me at HEB. I'll be buying the grandma's hummus.
Oh, girl, it's so good.
It's delicious. And you know what I've started doing is
Eating
I get off work.
Setting?
Oh, I've been doing that for years. No, I've taken to the next step where I get off work, I walk into HEB because the bus lets me off right there. I buy 10 flour tortillas, a thing of Grandma's hummus, and I eat, not all the tortillas, but I eat that container of Grandma's hummus on the walk from the grocery store.
Snack of champions. Like, literally, Grandma's hummus is way better with flour tortillas than with, like, chips or crackers or vegetables even.
You just need something to spread the taste across.
Dude, I think flour tortilla is the optimum Grandma hummus accessory.
I agree.
Nailed it. All right, well, that was a great plug for Grandma's hummus.
It should be
born
and
raised in
company.
Austin, Texas. Yeah. Yes. In the meantime, other plugs, things that I've been enjoying. I have just scooted along to the second book in the fucking Stormlight Archive. I don't even know what it's called.
The Brandon Sanderson story?
Yeah, but I don't even know what the book is called that I'm reading. The second book.
I can look it up real fast. Or wait, do I have it?
So it's dope as fuck, as intended. We are meeting some new characters.
Words of Radiance?
Words of Radiance, yes. So just moving along with that. Still recommending that. Check that out. Fantasy is life. And that's how I feel. Nikki, what are you loving?
I love you talking about that too, because we were talking about, you know, if you want to get it on the Shannara series, do it now.
Girl.
So you can read it while it's still evolving and coming out. This is great with Brandon Sanderson. This motherfucker is in his prime.
I'm so happy
right now
to be a part of it.
Me too. And it's lovely. And he brings books out often enough that it's not like a George R. R. Martin situation where being part of the fandom is seriously just years of frustration. Yeah. Which, no shade. I understand how hard it is. But Brandon Sanderson's not like that girl. She don't make you wait. She brings that shit to you every year, pretty much.
So much. Especially even if it's, like, not in this series. He's got, like, other series ongoing. So, yeah. Get on that Brandon Sanderson train. And there's going to be some things about him as a person you don't care for. Some facets of his life you might think are interesting. But you know what he's got? He's got the words, and they are prolific, and you will enjoy them.
They are words of radiance, bitch.
Girl! Snaps.
I have been reading, just for something very, very different, I've been reading this book called White Trash. And it is all about what it is to be poor and white in America. And it's really interesting because, you know, I've often used the term white trash to describe myself, which I know is very controversial. But to me, white trash is very similar to faggot in that I have to use it and own it so other people can't hurt me with it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sensical. I'm pulling up exactly who the editors are, but White Trash is a collection of essays. It's White Trash, Race and Class in America by Matt Ray. It's a series of essays from all kinds of different perspectives. The very first essay is about a queer man who grew up in a trailer park in New Jersey in the 50s and 60s. Pardon me. But there are many different sort of viewpoints about white trash. And what's interesting about being a poor white person is people of color don't trust you because you're a white devil. And people who are white but have more money than you don't trust you because white people are supposed to, quote unquote, be successful, right? We have all this privilege. So if you're a white person in America and you're not successful, that gives everyone kind of, it allows them to just shit on you because they're like, well, you had everything and you did nothing with it. And white people, even though people don't maybe consciously think that, I think that's why white people are so hateful to poor white people. And it's really sad because really poor white people tend to be the most racist. They should be the least racist because we should have a coalition with people of color who are also being pushed down by the wealthier members of society. Anyway, as you can tell, it's been a really important read for me. And it's really helped me see the kind of place in culture that I occupy. And that people I knew growing up occupied. And it helps to explain a lot of the meanness that I saw in our town and in our society when I was growing up. I love it. White Trash, Race and Class in America, really edited by Matt Ray.
Essays. Things I like better than short stories.
Amen to that, Queen. Yeah. Yes.
Wow, that sounded really powerful. I'm super interested in that because it is very much a part of our culture and upbringing and people that we know and have been and are related to. Fascinating.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, be sure to check out those things and catch Beauty and the Bitch everywhere you get your podcasts. We'll be there.
All right. Bye, Mimi.
Oh, goodbye. We should finish this bottle of wine.
Oh, let's do it. Legends of Shannara.
Shannara.
Do you have a home? Beauty and the Bitch.
You
look. Bitch. Beauty and the Bitch.
Beauty and the Bitch.